Hey guys, welcome to Channel Surfing, the IGN-TV podcast. I'm addressing the camera at the top.
For the first time.
For the first time, because we're actually going to post the entire video for podcast.
And you want to hear something funny is that last week, Keeping It Real did that. I didn't realize that was happening.
Oh, yeah.
And was doing my normal monkey faces when I didn't think we were going to be on camera.
We'll see. So now that we've talked to you, we'll ignore you, but we won't really. We were, also by the way, I forgot to mention that I got a nosebleed moments ago. It was funny, right before we came in here.
You did?
If I start gushing blood,
Oh.
We'll see what happens.
What's going on, buddy?
I don't know.
Are you okay?
Just for fun.
Okay.
So we're recording this on Monday morning and probably post on Tuesday, morning after the Super Bowl, which, we're both so excited about.
Yes.
But no, we're not. I don't follow sports, but I
don't
follow
even understand sports words.
But let's talk about commercials.
Let's talk about commercials.
Because, that is, look, no matter what, the Super Bowl commercials are a thing. Mm-hmm. You end up watching them all, and they are a big deal. They put up so much money. There's so many celebrities involved. What did you think of this year's crop?
Weird.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to distill it down to one word, it would just be weird. it was such an odd mix, even when you have one brand that's sending such a totally mixed message where it's nationwide is isn't Mindy Kaling hilarious? Here's Matt Damon, dead kid.
Right.
It was what is going on? Did you guys not focus group these? I mean, it is so expensive to buy that ad time.
Hugely expensive.
Hugely. I mean, that's a massive investment. And so normally when you're going to do something like that, a company will really focus group it.
Right.
Which means, if you guys don't know, it means basically you go and you hire a marketing company to test the waters.
Yeah. See, how would you react to?
How would you react to? And I can't believe that no one reacted as the entire internet did with completely being appalled.
Yeah, it was just a really weird, because look, it's not to say, there were a couple of things I think we both really liked that were sort of, you would say, public service announcements.
Sure.
But because they were so specifically kind of announcing from the get-go, here's what they are, or even the one that was about domestic abuse, which was very very startling but strong. The Nationwide one was so weird because it went, people were joking, it's this M. Night Shyamalan, twist to it. It was very strange approach.
It's I am dead people.
There's CGI cooties and this whole,
Because it's very whimsical and playful. I mean, this is the other thing too that's odd to me about that commercial, everything. But this piece of it is particularly odd. Obviously I think that people are turned off because they're trying to sell a product.
Yeah.
They're trying to scare people into buying insurance for their children's impending death.
Right.
So that's A. But two is that it had this very whimsical quality, and then the kid's dead and then it just shows this you just picture this dead, drowned kid in a bathtub immediately. Yeah. But then also, when it was looking at all the adventures he could have had in his life, they were very dangerous things to do. You know what I mean? He was soaring on the high seas in the middle of
he was gonna die one way or the other.
Crashing waves. They were gonna kill him no matter what.
Right.
With a dog who obviously would have been thrown off and drowned. I mean, it was it was such a mixed message.
What's great about this modern day and age, and I will say, usually I do watch the Super Bowl for the commercials. Literally, I didn't. I was just jet lagged and whatever, and I wasn't. So I was watching Twitter, and I see these reactions, and I'd look at the ads after. So that one was hysterical because everyone went crazy, and then instantly, in this day and age, everything is gonna be instantly a meme and turn into things. So I even did some snarky tweets about it, and I was very quickly followed by and retweeted by the Nationwide Dead Kid Twitter that someone had just
immediately
instantly grabbed and started.
Yeah.
It's again, because like you said, it's this is such a big deal, it's such a big stage, everyone's gonna see it. It is just kind of shocking that it got through because it's someone is either losing their job or will just never be hired again by Nationwide.
Well, but Nationwide made that call.
There had to be so many levels
of people that are in trouble today. I mean, everybody made a really stupid call.
Someone made the pitch, first of all, but then people were like,
Yeah. I mean, and it is a funny, delicate balance because, okay, first of all, I was watching it live and I really was genuine. I didn't know that the rest of the world would share my shock, but I really was are you insane?
The
minute that happened. And it had followed the Cats in the Cradle commercial. So I was spend time with your kids, Dad, because they're going to be dead soon.
Right. Well, there was Dad almost died. There was multiple commercials with people missing limbs with prosthetics, which again were sending very positive messages, but it was still a weird again, these companies aren't talking to each other, so it was coincidence, but it's like, what's in the air this year that so many Super Bowl commercials are taking this weird lean?
Grim sort of tone. I don't know. I mean, and I wanted to circle back to what you were saying, which was that domestic violence ad. It's kind of sad that they get lumped together, which is what I've seen.
Right.
Like, no, we have to hear about dead kids and domestic violence. Okay, wait, two very different things.
Right.
First of all, Nationwide, again, is selling a product.
Yeah.
That was a public service announcement on what I had read was actually one of the highest, that day is one of the highest incidents of domestic violence, which is why they put it on the air. And then it's why they put it on the air in that way. It was a super effective campaign, and I think it would stand out if it wasn't set against all this other insanity.
Right.
Yeah, which is too bad. And then there was also the Like a Girl campaign.
Right, which it's a little mixed there because it's always, so they are selling a product.
Yeah.
But the credit I would give them is they present what they're doing from the beginning of that commercial.
Yeah.
So it's not like the Nationwide where it's that twist. Like, that kid you've been following has been dead the whole time. Yeah. Like, the Always one, like, starts from the very beginning to be like, we're kind of showing you this, this story of these girls and the messaging and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think it's a really effective campaign.
It's great.
I mean, it is funny that it's always, I had a friend of mine tweet, I think I'd like my feminist ads a little better if they weren't, connected to menstruation, but I'll take what I can get, just like with my rights.
Right. And then with and the rest, I guess this wasn't a great year though, because even the celebrity ones, like, they were okay ones, but and I think the Liam Neeson one was particularly funny as far as using his persona. Like, I liked the Walter White one, but it wasn't like amazing. It wasn't like, oh my God, what they did with it.
The Esurance one, it's interesting because I did like the Walter White one too. I almost found the Lindsay Lohan one like disturbing.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, but she really is, like, Walter White's a character, so it's kind of okay to make that joke. But Lindsay Lohan really is that dangerous mess who will crash her car and be on all these drugs.
Right.
Like, it's not that funny, She's it's kind of sad to me. That one I thought was really weird. I think my favorite in terms of the fun commercials was the Liam Neeson one. I thought that was a good time.
It was very funny, like taking, again, someone's persona, using it in a very funny way for an unusual, obviously the mundane, like having Liam Neeson in that situation, it worked very well. And Pac-Man was just kind of fun as far as like, I wish that would happen to me.
I wish that would happen to me too. I was thinking that we had actually been invited to that set.
Yeah, I remember that.
Know if,
I was on the email chain. Yeah, I think it was out of town or something, but yeah.
Yeah, oh well.
All right, what can you do? Let's move on to superhero TV shows because there's plenty to talk about. I was traveling last week. I was in South Africa last week on a set visit to Black Sails, but it was funny seeing, like, when breaking news would happen. I'd be like, oh my God, there's no one to, like, there was people to talk about, but not usual people I talk about. Let's start out talking about AKA Jessica Jones, which again is, I know it's like really in some respects under the radar because it is a pretty obscure character for a lot of people, but is a show I'm so excited about because I'm such a fan of the comic book.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it for now a few different reasons.
Well, and that's the thing is this. Let's talk about there was two big casting news last week, but the first one, the really big one, was it's a great piece of casting, both if you know the comic because you're like, oh, cool, but if you don't, it's going to get a lot of attention to this show, which is why it's canny and smart. So, Mr. David Tennant joining the cast of AKA Jessica
I know,
Jones.
I lost my mind. It was the funniest thing, and I'm jumping the shark here a little bit because I'm going to say what happened, which was that I was at an event. I was at a screening of The Flash on Monday, and when I came out of it, I looked at my phone, and David Tennant was a Marvel villain, and there was an X-Men live action series, like, confirmed. Although it's not really confirmed. We'll get to that later, I know.
Yeah.
Yes, I will watch the former Doctor Who in anything and everything. I am particularly excited to see him play a villain.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting choice, because he is so beloved by some of us as the Doctor.
Yeah.
And of course, he's done Broadchurch and then Grace Point.
Barty Crouch Jr. was a bad guy.
But I'm really looking, and it's a cool character, right? But
it's a really cool character.
I am curious to see how they're gonna, because of his history with Jessica Jones, which is kind of nasty.
It's really nasty.
Like, how far do you think they're going to go?
So yeah, he's not just playing a villain, he's playing a particularly cruel, nasty villain. So he's playing the Purple Man from Marvel lore, who's an old-time villain. Daredevil, I think, was where he was first introduced. But he was just kind of there on the periphery. And They didn't do a lot with him. There was a great story about him that's one that they unfortunately cannot do unless they get the Fantastic Four rights back, which was called Emperor Doom, about Doctor Doom. But he was literally a cog in the machine in that story. It was like Doctor Doom gets Purple Man, amplifies his power, but he's just like, he's just trapped in a machine. So Doctor Doom can, I almost said Doctor Who, can control everyone. It was a great story, but Purple Man himself was just kind of whatever. And then just Alias, the comic book, used him in this much more cruel, awful way, very powerful way.
Yeah.
And I will be interested to see, where this show sort of where they're willing to go as far as the psychological ramifications of all that.
We should leave that.
I think the details. But all you have to say is like he's the Purple Man. He can control people with his mind, make them do what he wants.
And it definitely plays into the nature of her character in a big way.
Yeah.
So it's almost so much so that if they don't do it, it's kind of loses a big piece of who she is.
There'll be a version of it.
Yeah.
I think there will be a version of it. They announced he's playing Kilgrave, which is Zebediah, I believe is his first name, a great comic book name. But so I don't know, will he have the purple skin or not? Or maybe it'll be that thing where when he uses his powers, he turns purple or something.
That was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about. How far? Because to me, it seems like what we're going to be getting from these Netflix Marvel series is like the street level, like that, which is exactly what we're getting. More grounded, more realistic. Yeah. Are you feeling like they're never going to go quite that far?
I think they'll just they'll restrain it because the MCU now. I mean, God, Guardians of the Galaxy. We did a whole funny tongue-in-cheek article about know your green and blue people because there was a lot. But this show being what it is, where it is, I'm gonna guess he will not have purple skin all the time. But when he uses his ability or something, there'll be some effect that will either change his skin temporarily or just a lighting thing. Yeah. That David Tennant will not have to be covered in purple makeup the entire time he's working on this show.
His beautiful face.
His beautiful face. He oddly kind of looks like the character. Once they read that he was playing it, I'm like, oh, he kind of actually looks like he has. And when he does like a big goofy smile, if he made it the creepy smile.
Yeah, it's certainly going to bring a big chunk of genre fandom to the show. I'll say that.
No, that's what I was saying. I mean, and I think he's a great actor too. So I'm not just like, oh, they just did it to get attention, but it's great for that 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
Great actor who has this big fandom who might not have checked out this particular show.
Now they will.
Yeah. And then they'll be disturbed by him.
Yeah. So. I was going to check it out anyway, but I am actively hugely excited.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to lie.
No, I thought it was awesome casting. The other big piece of casting that was very interesting because if you read Alias, this character had nothing to do with Alias, and yet she's a huge part of Marvel history, was Rachel Taylor from the first Transformers movie and the Charlie's Angels reboot a few years ago, has been cast as Patricia Walker, a.k.a. Hellcat in the comics, who we're guessing is going to basically take the place of Captain Marvel in this story.
I didn't know we were guessing.
We are a lot of this. So here's the thing. Again, I won't go into details if you haven't read the comic book. But in the comic book, Jessica Jones, ex-Avenger, ex-superhero, but her buddy, who's still part of the scene, is Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. Has a lot of scenes them hanging out together.
So this is her bestie.
And so that's a lot of people's theory, and I agree with it. It just kind of makes sense to me because while it would be completely awesome if they had an actress that they cast as Captain Marvel for the movie, and we first met her in Jessica Jones, as elaborate as Marvel is being, there are still kind of limits to that. I don't think they're doing that, and so what I am guessing is that she will take the place of that. I'm out there being a superhero, but we can sit and chat because we have a history together, and maybe we used to fight together.
I think that a character that's going to lead her own movie is going to be reserved for the films.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they will have people that are like they've done with S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
They'll have your Sifs show up on S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that, but they're not going to have probably Captain America show up.
And I mean, we might at some point, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that one day the lead of one of those movies will show up.
Yeah.
But if Carol Danvers had a significant role in the TV show's comic book, she'd be a recurring character, kind of like Lindsay Fonseca on Agent Carter. And to that extent, I don't think that's happening.
Scheduling wise, I just don't even think that's realistic.
Yeah. And you just get into they haven't cast this person yet. They don't even have a director yet for Captain Marvel. There's a lot to work out there.
Although there were all of those rumors that they had actually shot stuff with an actress and that they then that was going to show up in Avengers 2, and then they scrapped it. I don't know if there's any validity to those rumors at all.
Yeah, who knows?
Or if she was recast or secretly cast or what. I think if someone had been cast, that would have bubbled up somewhere.
We would have at least
by
be
now.
hearing the name as a rumor, and we haven't really heard anything but speculation. So that is, I believe, how they'll probably use her, because Hellcat, and it kind of works well because Hellcat is a longtime Marvel hero, but never a huge player with her own story, so it kind of makes sense. Like, let's kind of use her in this way, in this story. And by the way, just a total trivia thing here for Hellcat is so funny because she first appeared as Patsy Walker, who had her own comic book in like the 50s and 60s when Marvel was doing like fashion model comic books and stuff.
Yeah.
And my mom used to read the Patsy Walker comics, so I got to explain to her, oh, they turned her into a superhero named Hellcat. And her boyfriend turned into a supervillain named Mad Dog. And it was basically like telling someone that Archie and Veronica eventually became enemies and superpowered characters.
Yes.
Right? that would be freaking awesome. Because another character who's...
I always hated Veronica. I would love to see Archie kick the crap out of Veronica.
What? If Veronica is a supervillain attacking him.
If Veronica is obviously under those.
You don't want.
It's like in one
unmotivated.
In one podcast, I'm like, wasn't that domestic violence campaign great?
Right.
Beat
you know what I'd
Veronica,
really
Archie.
like to see?
Beat her, knock her out. No, if she was an empowered supervillain,
right.
Then I would like to see it happen because she
murdering
was,
people.
She was always so bratty, and I always felt like Betty got the short end of the stick, and she was so sweet, and it wasn't fair. We should probably move on.
Going back to Jessica Jones, I will just say that another character that had a fairly significant role in the comic book that, again, I think they'll have to have a proxy for if they decide they want to use anything is Scott Lang, Ant-Man. So unless Paul Rudd is like, I'm sure, I mean, and Paul Rudd's awesome and is like going to be on Parks and Rec in the final season.
Yeah, he will do TV.
So it's possible, but I also, maybe they'll just change that and tweak that. We'll see.
I think that does just get so complicated, though. Again, not just in terms of how and when they want to play certain characters.
Yeah.
But it's just scheduling wise.
Yeah, because these actors want to and should be allowed to do other things.
Right.
They cannot literally be like, yes, your entire year
is about being
only being Marvel.
Yeah.
Like, and even was it Chadwick Boseman who's playing Black Panther, who was actually only and is still a huge commitment, is a 5-movie deal, which is less than a lot of them.
Because he wants to be able to do other things.
Right.
They all do. I mean, they're actors.
They're actors.
They need to express themselves.
But anyway, I'm very excited by all this stuff about Jessica Jones. Yeah. So we'll keep you updated.
Are you more excited about Daredevil? Putting you on the spot.
I don't know. In a way, personally, more for Jessica Jones, just because she's never been done, and I love that comic, even though I love Daredevil too. Yeah. I just love Alias so much, so I just hope they nail it. So we'll see. Going on to other comic books, other female comic books, and one we've talked about a lot, but there just keeps being a flood of news, is let's talk about Supergirl, because since we last did the podcast, she was cast. I mean, that was the big thing.
Yeah.
In fact, it was, I think, right after maybe the morning.
A couple castings, but yeah, most importantly.
Most importantly was they cast Supergirl herself. A last name that currently I'll massacre, but soon we'll all have to know how to pronounce.
Yeah.
So Melissa Benoist? What do you think? Benoist. Why not? Who initially I thought,
all of it's wrong, probably.
I was like, I've never seen her in anything because she was in Glee season 4 and 5, and I stopped watching Glee halfway through season 3. But then I realized she is in Whiplash, which I have seen. So she's the love interest.
Yeah, she was the love interest in it. I mean, to be frank, I love Whiplash.
Yeah, it's not a huge role.
She didn't have a really big role. She was fine though.
Yeah, she was good, but the nature of the role is kind of that he's not very, he's having some issues investing in that relationship.
Yes, he is. And I mean, I certainly remember when I was watching the film, I was like, wow, this is a really great cast, including even this girl.
Yeah,
so, there you go.
But it's very funny because she was on Glee season 4 and 5 because Grant Gustin was from Glee. I did kind of like it because it kind of trapped the people who would be like so quick to say like, oh, from Glee, that's horrible, just for no reason except someone took another acting role.
Yeah, and
because
sing.
because Grant Gustin, who and everyone ended up really liking, came from Glee.
You know what this is all about?
DC is going to cast everyone from Glee.
They are seeding their musical crossover episode.
Maybe that'd be amazing. Flash and Supergirl meet, and it's just like this giant song.
And it's just like there would have to be, Buffy already did it though, where it was like one of the villains they had to sing. So you couldn't really do that. I guess you could.
just act like, just sing, just for the one episode. Just ignore that they've never done it before.
It's Tony Soprano, the villain, the super villain.
Tony Soprano. I getcha. There was an amazing episode of Batman.
That was really corny.
There was an amazing episode. Amazing. You should watch this if you never have. Batman Brave and the Bold, the animated series, did an episode about a villain called the Music Meister, and Neil Patrick Harris voiced him, and he made you sing, and it was the musical episode, and it's great.
See, there's no reason that they can't do this.
Yeah.
There's no reason that they can't do this live action. They have all these good singers now.
They do. So the DC universe is really growing with singing talent. But yeah, so I don't know enough to say like, yes, great, but I also think, hey, I like what I've seen of her. She's got brown hair, but it'll be okay.
It'll be okay. She'll be
They've
fine.
got the science, the work, special effects. They can do amazing things to change people's hair color.
Well, I remember when Jennifer Lawrence was cast as Katniss, and like people were tripping because, and then she was like, "They're gonna dye my hair.
Right.
It's fine."
That will be the salvation, the solution to all this. So they cast her, and then we heard one other piece of casting. This is happening so quick that I could even foresee we'll hear more before this even posts.
Right.
Because this is going to shoot very soon.
Yeah.
But the second one we heard was playing James Olsen.
Thank you very much.
Yes, is Makad Brooks, who's best known for True Blood, I'd say. We already knew from the character description that this would be a very different Jimmy Olsen.
Right.
And I'm not talking about his race, which, again, and this is such a barrel of worms that are open, but I don't think Jimmy Olsen's race is important to Jimmy Olsen.
No.
Like there are comic book characters. I'm not saying there's no comic book characters where the race is important. Jimmy Olsen, is not important. What I will say is about this character is like they just cast. It's not that they cast a black guy. It's they cast this like very like sort of hunky buff.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like leading man type.
Yeah,
for Jimmy Olsen.
Did you see him on True Blood?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not, and that was the thing that I was struck by too. I was like, okay,
Right,
I guess this is going to be a whole different.
And the description
James.
when we saw the character descriptions, it even referred to that. Like they called him an alpha male.
Yeah.
And we even said back then,
Huh?
Jimmy Olsen, alpha male.
Yeah.
That's different. So that's just very interesting as far as like, okay, and to me, that's the kind of thing that usually will give me more concern than the race thing. I'm like, yeah, Jimmy Olsen could be any race if he's like the plucky cub reporter, trying to make it as a photographer. But if he's like, I'm James and I'm here to kick ass, that's very different. But we'll see. Should we talk about the theory?
Yeah, let's talk about the theory.
It's just one theory, but it's an interesting theory, which is, I want to give proper credit here, is DCTVUniverse.com throughout this theory. But they have this whole theory about what if James Olsen is actually a merger with another character named Val Zod from DC Comics, who is like, again, DC, I'm going into the whole can of worms here of
Open it up.
comic books and multiple realities, and the fact that there's Earth 2 and Val Zod, who I believe is another Kryptonian, his name certainly implies, was another character entirely who then became Superman. He became the new Superman in that world. And yes, James Olsen is another character in that world too, but the comic books the TV shows are already doing this a lot.
Yeah.
Where they're like merging characters together or taking an idea and spinning it together.
Such a cool theory, because he could basically, Jimmy Olsen, that plucky reporter who's kind of a little bit nerdy,
right,
could be his Clark Kent identity.
Right.
That could be his secret identity.
And to extrapolate here, if that were true, I don't think it was supposed to be. I think Clark Kent, Superman, would still be a separate character.
Yeah,
who we probably won't see but hear about.
Yeah.
But the idea that this guy, and again, here I'm going to completely go down the what if role. Like, what if he's another Kryptonian and she doesn't realize it?
Yeah.
She's working with this guy,
Yeah.
and he's got like a hidden agenda, and I don't think he's a bad guy. Maybe he's there to help her, but he's not revealing who he is.
Right,
Yeah.
and then that show gets to get away with having a version of Superman without actually having to have Superman on the show.
Right, without having the Clark Kent Superman.
Right, the Clark Kent Superman on the
Yeah,
show. Exactly.
yeah.
I think that'd be pretty neat. I mean, I do think, like, again, just having seen this guy before, like, you're gonna have to do a lot of work to don that secret identity.
Dude
this is a big guy.
Yeah, who's like ready to play a superhero, which is again why it's funny that he's playing Jimmy or James Olsen, because it's a very different version.
That's where I think it could get comical.
Yeah.
Just sort of like, well, I've got my glasses on now, and now I'm not 6 feet tall and massively ripped.
Right. But that's again, if he's supposed to be like the alpha male thing, you know. So we'll see with that. And then the other thing we heard about is that I think it was TV Line.
Do you think they'll be in love? Okay.
Tony in Love, musical episode. That's one of the songs.
Our comments are going to be like, never let these two near comic.
Right. Everyone knows that superheroes hate singing. We heard that the villain in the premiere, according to TV Line, I believe, would be a super obscure DC villain called the Lumberjack, who appeared like once in Wonder Woman, which doesn't really mean anything. I mean, people were like, again, it's like you have to look at history here where you're like, oh man, whatever, that's their first villain, but I don't even remember who Arrow's first villain was. Like, I mean, I'm talking the pilot.
In the pilot episode, didn't he have that
was
big?
Just the first person on the list, or
Yeah, it was like the first person on the list, but then he had that. I believe it was in either the first or second episode. Didn't he have like that big, massive, multiple people fight?
Yeah, probably.
In the hallway?
Probably, yeah.
Am I making that? You guys tell me if I can't. I remember that fight, and I think it was like in the first or second episode. So I don't think it was like singular villain.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think they want to just give her a big guy to fight in the pilot.
Yeah.
The important thing here, just to kind of extrapolate on what we just talked about, is that TV Line did say that he would fight her having already fought her cousin. Mm-hmm. So kind of solidifying that Superman exists in this world. Where is he? Why is he not showing up to help her? I'm guessing there's got to be a plot point about that, you know, because it would be weird. Well, yes, it's not like he would have to show up every week. If he never shows up, there has to be a reason. So it's like, okay.
He's just kind of he's kind of taking a sabbatical in the Fortress of Solitude. He's just thinking about things.
He's just thinking about things, yeah.
You know?
So, so we'll see how the lumberjack.
He's like, you got it, Kara.
Right, you take this over. So we'll see how the lumberjack is portrayed. I'm guessing he will not be called the lumberjack. Like they will not say that name on screen.
Well, they're getting, these shows are getting pretty good about being tongue-in-cheek about, they've got like Cisco on The Flash, sort of like, haha.
And they really go back and forth. Cisco, The Flash is really using Cisco to give them all names.
Yeah.
But even on Arrow, a lot of the characters have not been referred to by those names. Like we know.
But they slowly get there.
They get there, yeah. But it's like Cupid doesn't show them like. I mean, she's I'm Cupid stupid, but it's like it's not like the media or everything. And even it's funny how they're doing with Arsenal. How I think they referred to him as Arsenal once.
He did.
Yeah. Oliver had a scene,
did, yeah.
But then the news report last week was like Arrow and Red Arrow. So they're kind of having fun with the idea
playing with it.
Yeah, he doesn't have a set name. But these other names are out there.
But they are calling her Canary.
They're calling her Canary. They still have not done Black Canary.
Yeah.
That's coming.
That's on its way.
They'll get to it.
By the way, just on a note of musicality, there is going to be, spoiler alert, a karaoke Flash episode.
Oh yeah, because and with am I blanking on his name? Jesse. I'm blanking on his last name, or both are, because he did Rent and he has this amazing musical background too.
They do like singing.
They're gonna sing. Of course they like singing. Our third and final of comic book TV news this week is a little bit of an update on X-Men, which I think like a year ago we heard.
It was. I think wasn't it kind of like at the last TCAs that was bubbling up? Anyway, go ahead.
No, just that we had heard that there was rumblings that Fox was looking at developing a X-Men TV show, and now one of the heads of Fox has gone on record and saying yes, that's something we'd like to do. Very early talks about it, and interestingly enough, he kind of confirmed that they are talking to Marvel because Marvel would kind of have to sign off on this, which is something we've actually wondered about before. With the TV rights.
Who has those rights was our question, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess
because we knew Spider-Man, we knew that Sony did not have TV rights to Spider-Man.
Right.
And it seemed like Marvel must have TV rights to X-Men because they've had Wolverine pop up on Ultimate Spider-Man. So I guess they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that they could theoretically. I mean, that is an interesting negotiation, though, right?
It's very interesting.
There seems to be, on the movie side, a bit of bad blood between Marvel and Fox in terms of the X-Men characters, and they're distancing, in the comics, they're distancing themselves from those characters and
not merchandising them.
Or just murdering them.
Yeah.
Things like that, so then suddenly if they were making profits from a live action show and had an investment in that, would they then backtrack off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, would they then want to promote those characters more? Would they have further investment?
I mean, maybe this is just a larger conversation. Again, what if, what maybe, you know, again, they have to kind of accept, I don't know, you know, at least think about the fact that they're not getting the X-Men rights back, right? Like we've talked about this. Like if Fantastic Four bombs, maybe that could revert.
Yeah.
But they've got 4 X-Men movies set for release in the next year and a half.
Fox is not letting go of X-Men.
That's not going back. So maybe they do have to have a larger conversation about, okay, if that's not happening, let's work this out. And I don't think it will mean, certainly no time soon, crossing over X-Men and MCU because it's too complicated.
Way too complicated. Yeah.
But maybe they can have a conversation about, okay, this TV thing, what will we do? How would this work?
Right,
you know?
and then and the interesting thing about that is that DC has this very clearly stated divide between TV and film. As we know, there's going to be a Flash in the movies. There's going to be a Flash on TV. Totally different universes. Marvel has now set up a cohesive universe, the cinematic universe and the television universe. This would, what? You know what I mean? So this would have to be X-Men on movies and X-Men on TV would be 2 totally separate things.
Well, I don't think that. See, I think I think it would be Marvel just allowing them to do the TV show, and it would be in the continuity of the movies.
But what of those actors are going to do a TV show?
Oh, it doesn't have to be any of them. But that's the thing is, there's X-Force, Generation X, X Factor. X Factor would be awesome because it's a detective agency thing.
Yeah.
So there's just a million ways you could do, and all you have to do is, you know, you can have the references to the movie stuff without it being a direct crossover.
Yeah, be pretty interesting to see how it's handled. You know.
It would be very...
Because it was X-Force that they were talking about using, wasn't it?
X-Force, well, X-Force as a movie has been talked about for quite a while, yeah.
Yeah, but
X Factor, which is the detective, which makes a lot of sense, like as far as like the detective agency idea. It's a kind of a film noir thing, which we're already getting with Jessica Jones and Powers, but why not another one? Yeah, we'll see. You know, and I want to kind of get... Whenever this topic comes up, there will always be people write to us or say, hey, if Marvel has the TV rights, why don't they just introduce that stuff into the MCU via TV? We don't know for sure if they, even though they have the TV rights, there might be restrictions on live action.
Yeah.
Certainly, I don't think they could do it. I don't know, but I certainly don't think they could. I don't think they could have a live action Wolverine. I think it is a weird restriction. Like right now, I don't think either of them could do anything on TV. But even if they could, they never would, I don't think, because even they know that, yeah, they could do it despite Fox, but what is the point of saying, guess what, there are mutants, all these characters, and we can't mention it in the movies?
Yeah.
How weird would that be?
That would be very weird.
It's a shared universe, but only on the TV show can we talk about all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And again, I think to your earlier point, it's just way too complicated in terms of the licensing and the rights and all that, and who's on first and who's got, I mean, that's like a math problem for lawyers.
Right.
But Marvel's got plenty on their plate as it is, you know, in terms of both film and television. And they are trying, I think, to get a stronghold in TV. They haven't done that yet.
No.
I mean, they are, you know, if we're looking at it as a race, like DC's winning on television.
Right. But Marvel's got...
But we're not looking at it as a race because we're not...
And Marvel's got so many things the next year, so we'll see where that goes. So yeah, we'll see what happens, though. I'd be very curious if this all works out. Let's do a few... We're going to keep this one short this week, but let's do a few reader emails before we wrap up here. First of all, I just had to read this one. Oh, is this Shane from Texas? I forgot to copy over who wrote this, but I believe this was longtime friend of the podcast, Shane from Texas. He writes,
hello.
Been meaning to drop you a line and say how much I enjoy hearing about the TCAs from y'all. That's got to be Shane from Texas. He knows we like that. I don't hear about the TCAs much from any of the other media outlets I check, and it's always interesting to hear how it goes on the inside, so to speak. Would love to get the podcast a little more often, but I know they keep y'all pretty busy, and Eric isn't as young as he used to be. So I'll patiently await each episode. Keep up the good work. Shakma, it's true. Not as young as I used to be.
You poor decrepit old man.
That's right.
That's awesome.
But old man Goldman will try to do a podcast. I say this, and then next week we're going to be out of town again.
We are going to be out of town.
We have to. It's all IGN editors have been assembled for next week.
IGN Assemble.
Yeah, we'll go to the IGN Assemble podcast. We miss it. So thank you, Shane, and thank you for your longtime support. Okay.
Thank you, Shane.
And then here's one that's pretty funny from, oh God, I'm going to massacre your name. How would you say that name?
Oh, put it on me, why don't you? Okay, dear.
Surinsvan?
Surinsvan? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we're really sorry. I'm going to call you S. Because otherwise it'd be just terrible for all of us. But he writes, I believe a he. No, I feel really terrible, but I really like this email. Hello, Eric Roth and all the rest. It's always great to hear you guys, but I haven't quite caught up yet. However, I had a quick question for both of you. I happened to be in Vancouver a few months ago, mid-October, at the Sutton Place Hotel with some relatives. I'm pretty sure I saw you, Eric, amongst other TV journalists. It sounded like there was some Bates Motel event going on. Anyways, small world, and what a coincidence, if that happened. I was in Vancouver at that time, and we were going to the set of Bates Motel, so that's probably me, and you should have come up and said hey.
Yeah, always come up and say hey.
If you were in Vancouver at the same time.
If you were in Vancouver.
But here is the question for us. On another note, you had a question about TV theme songs a few episodes back. I always appreciate a good opening theme. Did you guys catch the 2 to 3 minute Better Call Saul promo theme song? That was great and quite catchy. Also, what about that new the 100 opening? Eric, I think you already commented on that. It's a great change and a way to start the show. Any others you can think of that are good? Fringe and Game of Thrones certainly come to mind. Has creative ways to introduce new seasons and themes. As always, keep up the good work. Shakma.
Shakma. I loved the Fringe opening and the theme song.
Which was another, J.J. Abrams would write all his theme songs, which is amazing.
Yeah, he has no talent at all.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I loved how they would switch it up, you know, sort of depending on
the alternate universe,
or what they were doing.
80s.
Yeah, the 80s one. They did some really neat things with those. The Game of Thrones open hasn't changed, has it? Or maybe they've added to the map
it changes. It can change episode to episode as far as where they're going.
Where they're focused on the map.
So the map can change.
I loved, though this series sort of fell apart for me. Actually thought the True Blood open was awesome. HBO just does great openings. There's one to a show that not a lot of people are watching, Halt and Catch Fire. Actually is a really cool opening and a really cool theme song. I am just going to keep talking about theme songs.
No. They asked it. It's a good question.
Saul is cool too, but it's a little different than what was released.
Well, yeah, because Saul. So we should say that music video is super fun, but that's not.
That's not the theme song.
I wish it was though, because I actually found that so catchy that.
I find it catchy too, but I feel like the one that's actually there is more tonally connected to what the show is all about.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, so of course, this day and age, the big problem is that on network you have less and less time. They keep whittling down their running time to get more commercials.
Right.
And so that's why so few shows have actual theme song opening credits. Usually, so many shows now are just a title.
Yeah.
Even Fringe they just were really clever with
how they did
that 15 seconds or whatever. So I will say I love the 100 added open. Yeah, I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast. Second season, the 100, they added like a 30-second opening credit stuff, and it's really cool. There is a Game of Thrones influence in that it's a map and going around, but in a very different way. It's like schematics and like sort of blueprints and infrared and stuff of places they're going on the show. It's really cool, and it's just so rare these days that it stands out.
Yeah, you don't get much anymore that's like a full-on, like the Jeffersons, where it's like a couple of minutes of a really catchy song that you could now listen to, and it's like a short music video.
That's why Too Many Cooks, I mean, there's so many things I loved about Too Many Cooks, which I don't even know if we ever talked about in this podcast. I'll stop myself from talking about it for an hour. But yeah, just the art of the like theme song that goes on for like a full minute, sometimes a full minute and a half.
Yeah.
That's long gone.
So rare.
Like Parks and Rec, even the ones that do, it's like we got to be done, like 30 seconds max. So yeah, it just brings you back to that.
We miss those days of a great theme song.
Yeah, I used to have, and I burnt them all onto my computer, like all the television's greatest hits collections, and it's like, it's so funny because those are like, wow, this keeps going. This is like, there's like multiple verses.
Yeah, they are like a full song.
Yeah.
A lot of the old ones. That was one of my favorites ever, is the Jeffersons.
Jefferson's great. And then I just read, as one does, the oral history of Facts of Life that EW.com did.
That was such a good theme song.
Written by Alan Thicke, who also wrote Different Strokes. What? Right? Yes.
What?
Uh-huh.
Did not know that.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
That's going to be the thing that's going to win me $1 million.
I knew that because of those CDs, because I would read the songwriting credits and went, Alan Thicke wrote these? But yeah, he did.
Wow.
So there you go. Which is kind of funny because I wonder how much, how much money did Alan Thicke make off the Different Strokes and Facts of Life theme songs before he started becoming a sitcom star himself?
He made so much money before he was America's dad.
And he said it's funny. I mean, as much as you can joke about it, it's like he's like, do you know how often I hear the Facts of Life lyrics referenced in TV shows and movies? It's just constant.
Take the good.
Yeah,
take the
see?
bad.
There you go. We have to pay Alan Thicke a lot of money now.
I know. Sorry, IGN.
So yeah, I'll curb this conversation
parody.
except to say that, yeah, there's a lot, HBO, Showtime, Dexter will always be one of the great ones in recent years.
Yeah.
And one day I would love if they can come back more on network. But
Yeah.
for now,
But I don't think that will happen.
probably not. Anyway, that is all for this week. So we won't be back next week because we're going to be off in San Francisco. But we'll be back the week after that. So questions and comments. We actually did a bunch of email this week. channelsurfing@ign.com. Follow Roth Cornet on Twitter. Eric IGN on Twitter. That's all for now. Shakma.
Shakma.